It's now time to call on David Butler. David's third novel, City of This, New Ireland, was shortlisted for the Kerry Group Irish Novel of the Year in 2015. And he's had a number of poetry collections and short stories published. He was the award winner to include the Colin Tobey, Benedict Kiley, ITT Redline, Fish International, and above all, his most prestigious prize was twice winning the Maria Edgeworth short story short competition. So David is going to give the adjudicator's comments for the short stories, and he'll read some of his own work. David.
Yeah, how do you follow simply strings with simply words? It's a hard task. You've so much chance with poetry, I suppose, because it's so musical. I have to say I was delighted that Ethna Long was here tonight, because I saw her first collection when it was still in manuscript form. I think she's a fantastic poet. And if anyone is in Dublin on Wednesday, she's launching her second collection, so go along and make it. She paints with sound, I'll put it that way. I'll just mention on with Maria Edgeworth 20 years ago that why do these festivals matter? They really do. That was it was the first story I was happy with, and then to have the validation that somebody else thought it was, worth the prize just really got me on the track, I suppose. It became the title poem of my first collection. And then I won it again. And then 2 years ago I won the poetry, so I could have won the football and the hurling in Edgeworthstown. So it's lovely to be back here, it really is. I think there were 137 stories, huge variety of theme, of place, of location, of voice. And the long list of 30, that was the easy part. But then bringing the 30 down to 15, and then the 15 down to the final 6, well, there's some quality out there, as I'll say. I don't have quite as detailed of comments to make about the commended stories, but I'll just say the commended stories were The Footbridge, Bistro 93, and 41 degrees north, 49 degrees west. And they took us variously to a primitive community where a worker from the West is based there. And he's given this task of, our challenge of getting hold of a young animal and sacrificing it, more or less. I think in my head, it wasn't specified, in my head it was Papua New Guinea or Borneo. Fascinating story. Bistro 93 then took us back to the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall and how Eastern Europe was there. A very fascinating story again. 41 degrees north, 49 degrees west. Was about a shipping disaster at the start of the century with people from Cork involved. So it took us absolutely everywhere. And I had no idea who had written these, which was great. I still don't, in that The Footbridge was written by W. Goodman. Male, female, I don't know. There's a Jane Green wrote Bistro 93, and John O'Donnell, 41 degrees north, 49 degrees west. I don't know if any of those are here for the presentations. Jane, lovely story. Bistro 93, well done, congratulations. So we only have time to hear the winning story, by the way, obviously, but that moves us then to third place, second place, first place, the prize winners. I should say probably, everyone is going to be, every judge is going to be, biased is the wrong word, they will have their own notions of what they're looking for in short stories. And it's a bit like judging international cuisine, do you go for spicy, do you go for pasta, do you go for fish, do you go for, there's just a variety out there. How do you judge music? So the things that appealed to me and that I was particularly looking for were voice, some sort of convincing and original voice, language, some sort of, first of all, control of language, but also originality. I probably leaned towards plot, but I didn't demand a plot. But those were some of the criteria, I suppose, for deciding which ones were strong. So in third place, we have Holy Saturday by Marie Farrell. I don't know, is Marie here? I'll read the comments anyway. Holy Saturday. The clergy have become such a soft target in this country, with fiction abounding in cardboard villains, that it is refreshing to come across a portrait viewed from the perspective of a nun in a convent attached to a boarding school for girls. So this is a quote from it. Outside, they have to be careful, congratulate, admire, move on. People are watching now. And anyway, it's never looked quite right, a nun with a baby, even before all the nastiness. So their order never did any of that. But people judge you, a woman who can't or won't have a child. So I found Holy Thursday a very sensitive, delicate and empathetic exploration of that sort of life in a climate where we really turned our back on it, I suppose, to a certain extent. So I thought that was a very worthy third place. In second place, there was a story called Flat 7 Up by Sive Moriarty. I assume Sive's not here? No? Okay. So again, it's another intriguing and quirky story driven by a compelling narrative voice. It opens memorably with, "See him there, the lanky one, sucking the vape. That fella has been terrorising me for the bones of 2 months." The narrative hook involves a car plunging into water, which was witnessed by, and again a quote, "that lanky bastard puffing away on the bridge above, looking down on me." While the narrator, an ex-con with a patient of 2, must do their level best to stay out of trouble and land a job in small town Ireland. I thought the pace was terrific, was really well handled, and the interest never sagged. And in the first place, and I know Bernadette Furlong is here, so I'll be asking her to read the story, which is lovely. It's entitled Black Mulcahy. And at 1,100 words, it was one of the shorter entries, which just shows you don't have to always go up to the limit of the word count. Nevertheless, from the opening line, Black Mulcahy, our grandfather, did something punch. The hook is, of course, what this terrible thing was, but what really impresses throughout the story is the control of the narrative voice, that of a twin child. Not unlike, as it happens, I was reading this novel at the time, the dark fairy tale twins of Agatha Christoph in her disturbing trilogy, The Notebook. So here is a characteristic description. This is one of the 2 twins, is the narrator. "Owen sat with me on the couch. It sagged with the shapes of others, and we struggled to get comfortable. I wondered if Black was among them, trapped in the upholstery, if the house remembered him better than we did." Or here's a wonderful thumbnail sketch. Dad came in soon after. He worked a night shift at the bottling yard, was like a bottle himself, long-necked and delicate, dangerous when he broke. I thought it was a wonderful, economic, compelling tale that I'm going to invite you guys to listen to now. Bernadette?
Thanks a million. I'm not used to reading my stuff out now, so bear with me. Black Mulcahy. Black Mulcahy, our grandfather, did something terrible once. We learned about it in school. On the bus home, Owen, my twin, took my hand and asked if it was true. I told him it might be. We were quiet at dinner, too full of questions to eat. Ma asked what was wrong, but we knew better than to say. She did not want to know, not really. She saw it at our meat, told us to eat up. That night in bed I could not sleep. Just before dawn I went downstairs. Owen padded after me, asked if I was all right. We were nothing alike, my brother and me. A waste of twins, Ma often said. I told him it was a long time to not know something. Owen sat with me on the couch. It sagged with the shapes of others, and we struggled to get comfortable. I wondered if Black was among them, trapped in the upholstery. If the house remembered it better than we did, for really we did not remember him at all. Could not. He was dead before we were born. I can't believe they never told us, I said. I can, Owen whispered. We fell asleep and Dad came in soon after. He worked the night shift at the bottling yard. He was like a bottle himself, long-necked and delicate, dangerous and rough. Owen slept on, and I told him that we knew about Black. Dad fingered his keys as though he might leave, step out into the darkness into what he knew best. Instead he said I should get to bed. He was pale in the hall light, his hair a mess. He didn't like mirrors, was tired of glass, with endless bells that clinked and clattered. I asked him who she was, the lady Black had done the terrible thing to. He dropped his keys on the hall table. Woke Owen. Get to bed, he said. Owen didn't want to go to school the next day, complained that he was sick. Ma clamped a hand to his forehead, turned his face this way and that. Her jaw hardened and she cuffed him, told him to get dressed. We walked in silence down the lane. Owen's bag smelled of pencil shavings, smoke and toilet floors. His pockets slapped with marbles, and I ached for him, for his quiet ways, his crooked tie. When the bus came, I boarded first, stayed near the front. Didn't look behind, didn't want to give them faces. Owen crumpled in his seat, knees up, fingers whirling the zip of his bag. A ball of paper landed in the aisle. Another sailed past to twack the back of the seat, the next struck my shoulder. Owen told me to ignore them, and I did, until they hit him. I didn't know who threw it, it didn't matter, they were all laughing. I walked to the back, the ball of paper, question in my hand, no one would claim it. I lashed at their smiles, caught one in the jaw, they were on me then. A howling mess, I dug into their flesh, unhooked vessels with my mouth. Blood and bruises, and the bus skidding to a stop, the driver screaming at us, pulling us apart by our hair and collars. I was thrown into my seat. Owen looked for me, but I ignored him. We arrived at school. The driver told us to wait and climbed heavily out. Tittering in the back, whispers, a hiss, the promise to kill me, to kill us both. I told them to get stuffed. Someone warned them to be careful. We were Mulcahys after all. No telling what we might do. I was marched to the principal's office. Principal Kennedy said he was ashamed of me, that what I had done, fighting like that, made the school look bad, made him look bad, but most of all made me look bad. It was unbecoming of a girl, he continued, to act like that, to get angry. I nodded and yes-sir'd, kept my eyes on the carpet. He softened then, liked me cowed, told me he wouldn't take the matter any further, sent me to the nurse to get patched up. The nurse pressed a cold compress to my mouth, told me to keep it there. Split lips, she said, and made tea. I sat and watched, swung my legs, and tried not to mind the heat in my knuckles, the sizzle of my scalp. What happened? She asked. So I told her. They know more about our family than we do, I said. The nurse opened a packet of ginger nuts and shook it at me. I pocketed one for later. Your father should have told you, she said. At least some of it. I thought, she doesn't know Dan or the shame he feels. How he started working nights to escape it, and how it followed him. How all these monsters sound like glass. I looked at her. She cleared her throat. Ellen was local, she said. Her father used to breed pigs, and that's how your grandfather, Black, met her. She was fond of him, but in a pitying sort of way, so I was told. He was older, much older, and his wife was work. Ellen was a bit of brightness in his life. I asked the nurse how she died. Trampled in a pigsty. It was Black who found her. I nodded, took a moment to go over what she'd said. So, he loved her. In a way. They said he dug her up, that he stood over her corpse and shot himself. The nurse frowned and checked my face, said I do. I asked for another biscuit, for Owen. She offered the packet. Don't smile for a few days, she said. After school, Owen and I walked up the lane for home. He found a stick and began lashing at briars. I watched until he was red and out of breath, then I gave him the biscuit in my bag. I didn't want mine, thought it would taste of all the wrong things. Owen split his, was used to things being halved, broken. Dad is strange, she said. I looked at him. Like father, like son, I thought. A family tree full of apples, only some did not fall far enough. And when they struck, they shattered like glass and hurt people. I started to run and so did Owen. We ran, though we knew we could not outrun each other. We were matched in every way, except our faces, the sad waist. Which one of us looked like Black? Which one of us looked like Dad? Thank you.
One of the fascinating things about judging anonymously is that you have no idea where the person is from or what gender they are. And when I was reading that, I made the, wrong assumption that those twins were me. It was Owen and his other brother, and they were always getting into fights. And then there was that thing that's very unbecoming for a girl, 3/4 of the way through, and I went, oh, okay. And it was such a lovely moment, like, you know. And incidentally, it doesn't at all surprise me that first, second, and third are all written by women. Most stories I read these days are written by women. It doesn't surprise me in the least. When I teach classes, almost everyone is a girl too. So you can go anywhere when you're right. You can be anything. You can be whatever. I'm going to read a story that was partly inspired by Loch Owl, which I just passed on the way up here. The little wooded island that you can see as you're looking out. And the original title of this was Lake Isle. Then I published it as The Memory of the Day. And just to show that you can go anywhere in your imagination, I want you to imagine the narrator of this is a girl who is still in primary school. Okay? The Memory of the Day. He's not supposed to come anywhere near the school. Joey told me. He's only supposed to come visit us up in Uncle Tommy's house. And that's only on Sundays. And not even every Sunday, just some Sundays. Mom would throw a fit if she knew he was here waiting for us. Joey started in the community school this year. But after school, he's supposed to wait for me by the gate because I'm too small to walk home on my own. The gate is where Daddy's car is parked. He's not supposed to be parked there. But when I get to the car, I can see that Joey's already sitting in the front seat. So I get it in. There's a smell of burning. Hey, Joey, I say. Joey's all quiet today. So I start kicking the back of his seat. Quit it, he says. Daddy's not saying anything either. He just starts driving. Usually he winks at me in the mirror, but today he doesn't. Mom told Joey he was to stop calling him Daddy, because it would only confuse me, which is really stupid. The time we visited him in the rest home, we called him Daddy. He had a breakdown, and he was wearing a dressing gown, and his face was all scratchy because he didn't shave for ages. A breakdown is when you stop speaking to anyone. But that was back when we were still living up in the big house. Daddy used to be a developer. I don't remember that time, but everyone says that's what he was. A developer is when you build houses. Miss Flanagan told the class he used to be the biggest developer in all of Leitrim. That's how come we had such a big house and everything. But then it all went wrong. And then Mammy took us to move in with Uncle Tommy. That was after Daddy had the breakdown. Before Joey went to community school, he was always getting into fights with the twins from the Riverside estate. Your dad's not such a big shot now, is he? That's what they were always shouting at Joey. The Riverside estate never got finished, and all the families had to be moved into a hostel because the toilets didn't flush properly. One morning, when we were supposed to be going to school, someone smeared poop all over our front door. Mammy was crying and shouting at Daddy, and she wouldn't let us go out that day. Uncle Tommy's not our real uncle. He's Mammy's friend. But we always called him Uncle Tommy. He used to work for Daddy, but he doesn't any longer. We've been living up in his house ever since the bank took the big house back. He's all right, I guess, except for when he fights with Joey. Once he smacked Joey twice on his behind, and Mammy shouted, "Don't you dare touch that child." Joey was shouting, "You're not my dad." And then he bit him on his hand and he wouldn't let go, and you could see afterwards the mark. That's when Uncle Tommy smacked him. After that he was locked in the room until he said he was sorry. But I don't think he ever said it. We're not going up to Uncle Tommy's now. So I ask, "Where are we going, Dad?" Daddy just looks at me in the mirror. He doesn't say anything. There's black on his face, like soot or something. And there's black on his hands as well. That must be where the smell of bird is coming from. Joey's looking out the window. I suppose we're going for a drive. But then at the sign we take a turn for the lake. So I suppose we're going to the lake. When Joey was little, Daddy used to take him down to the lake all the time. He has this boat down there, and sometimes he used to allow Joey to row. I was always too small, but sometimes he used to allow Joey. He even allowed him to hold the motor with Daddy's hand on top of his hand. The pier is all boggedy, but still you can walk on it if you're careful. That's where the boat is tied up. It's all wet, and Daddy says, "Jump in and bail her out, there's a brave girl." To bail is when you throw out the water with a tin of soup. There's loads of water in it because no one's taken it out for ages, and it's all rusty coloured. When I get in the boat it rocks, and water sloshes about. But then when I sit down it stops, and you can hear the waves against the bottom. The gossipy waves, Daddy used to call them. Mammy told Uncle Tommy he was always queer in the head. Joey doesn't help me to bail because he's to help Daddy carry stuff out of the boot. He needs Joey to help because there's a basket with loads of stuff in it, and a plastic can of petrol, and the motor, which is really heavy and has this propeller at the end, and Daddy's rifle case. It's green and has straps. Joey's looking at Daddy kind of funny after he gives him the rifle case. "Why do we need the gun?" he says. "We can shoot a few rabbits." "Where?" "On the island." He rubs Joey's head, but Joey crinkles up his forehead and speaks of the ground. "There's no rabbits on the island," he says. "We'll see," says Daddy. That's what he always says when you ask him for something. And then afterwards, he always says yes. Or nearly always. I'm not big enough to take any of the things, so Joey has to get into the boat with them. It rocks when he gets in. Daddy passes the basket down to Joey, and then he passes the plastic can of petrol, and then the rifle. "Be careful with that," he says. "Lie it down on the floor." He looks all serious, like when he used to get letters from the bank and everything. Then he gets in, and the boat rocks all over the place. The motor is too heavy, even for Joey, and he has to take it off the pier himself. And then he has to tie it on so it doesn't fall off. I put my foot on the rifle case. It's heavier even than an oar. Daddy used to go hunting with it when we were still up in the big house. One time he took Joey with him and they shot a rabbit. There was this big scab on its head when he hung it up in the garage. Mum threw a fit when she found out he'd taken Joey with him. "Jesus, are you trying to kill the child?" That was ages ago though. Daddy's elbow has to pull the engine loads of times before it starts. And then there's this big blue cloud and the engine goes tug tug, and then start to move out into the lake. It sounds more like a lawnmower, and the boat tilts up. The water's brown and there's a long line of yellow bubbles behind us, so you can see where we came from. We're headed for the island in the middle of the lake, which has all trees on it. Joey told me they went out there a couple of times to catch eagles. It's hard to see where the rabbits would go though. It's only the same size as the schoolyard. And anyway, it's going to get dark soon, and then you wouldn't be able to hunt rabbits. One time when it got late, I asked Daddy how come the lake was full of bright. Daddy just messed up my hair. "It's bright with the memory of the day," he said. It doesn't take long to get to the island, but then you have to be careful because it gets all shallow and there's mud and branches and rocks and reeds. Daddy steps into the water and it comes up past his knees. There's a cloud of midges around his head, and everything through it looks blurry. Midges make you itchy. But the midges are because it's getting dark. Daddy lifts us out of the boat and onto the island, first Joey and then me. But when I ask, does Mammy know we're out here, he says, your Mammy's fine. Don't worry about your Mammy. And I'm not. But Joey has a strange look, like I've seen him sometimes when he thinks Uncle Tommy is telling us fibs or something. Daddy pulls a big towel out of the basket. Put that around your shoulders, Katie, I thought that. Because on the boat I started shivering. He sounds all hoarse, like when you have a sore throat. It's still not all that cold, but I put a towel around me and I sit on the basket and swing my legs. You wait here, Alana, won't you? He says. And he nods to Joey to come on. Where are we going? Joey asks. Daddy doesn't say. He just puts his hand on his shoulder and then he leads him off into the woods. When Joey looks back at me, he looks scared. They're gone for ages. It's starting to get darker now. After a while, a car comes beside the pier where Daddy's car is parked. It's far away, but you can hear it like it's close. It's a white police car, like the one Sergeant O'Mara drives. She's a vanguard. Once she had to come into the school when someone broke all the windows of the big house. Well, maybe it's not her. It's too far to see. Daddy, I call. There's a lump in my throat because I'm crying, and my nose is running. Joey! When they come back, Daddy's face is all wet. His eyes are red, like he's been crying too. He doesn't have the rifle with him. And even though it's dark, I can see that Joey is all white and his eyes are big and he's shaking, like when he's been in swimming and there's a wind afterwards. I run over to him and stick my head into him. Take Katie back over, Joey, says Daddy, and his voice is even more hoarse now. And then we all get into the boat. Then after he starts at the engine, Daddy gets back out of the boat. Tell your mother, he says. But he doesn't tell Joey what he has to tell Mommy. Then he pushes us away. Dad, I call him. Are you not coming, Dad? But he's not. He just goes back into the woods without looking back at us. All the way back to the pier, Joey is shaking. He won't say anything, even when I ask him how Daddy's going to get back. He just looks past me. But how is Daddy supposed to get back? And I kick his foot because I'm crying and he still won't look at me. Over Joey's shoulder, I can see the trees on the island are moving up and down. They look like cardboard because it's dark. Then the sky over them goes black with crows. And then there's this bang. You can hear the echo roll all around the lake. Thank you very much.